Let's see where we are going to call this function, create new game function. So if we go to our game view, every time we open the game view, as soon as it appears, we want to start our game, all right? Because once we get to this view appears, we want to check if there is a game to join. And if there is, we want to join that game. Otherwise, we will create a new one and start waiting. So this is the place. As soon as this is loaded, we want to check and start this procedure of joining or creating new game. So how we do that is we need to access our onAppear function that is being called every time our user opens this screen. So in order to have access to that, we need to scroll down at the bottom, and we need to find the place where our geometry finishes. So we have multiple curly braces here, and the best way to find where our geometry finishes, you can just select where the curly brace is and go left and right. You will see that Xcode automatically highlights the last curly brace that is responsible. Also, if you just put a tick cursor here, it shows which is the starting curly brace here. So after our geometry curly brace, I'm going to put a dot and say onAppear. And we are going to perform some function. And how we access that now? So basically we have access to our game view model here. And then there is this function in our Firebase service that has a create game function. So right now we don't have, sorry, not create game, the start game function. So we need to access this start game function. But we don't want our view to somehow be able to connect to our Firebase service because we are using an MVVM pattern, and it would be crazy to add all the functionality there in order to get to the access to our backend in our view. So what we need to do is to tell our game view model to do that for us. So to do it, we need to have a function. So let's go to our game view model. And after my initializer, I'm going to create a function and call this get the game. Okay, so we are going to get the game that we want to play. Now, if there would be a game that we will join, it will give us that game. Otherwise, it will create a new game and give it us the new game that we will play. So what we need to do here is, now we have created this dummy game. We don't need that anymore because we are not going to create the game ourselves. What we want to do is to grab it from our Firebase, because there is no point of creating this hard coding the game ourselves anymore. So let me write the function here, then we will look into our game object there. So our function needs to access our Firebase service, because the function that is starting the game is in our Firebase service. We say Firebase service shared in order to be able to use our singleton there, and we say start game with. Now we need the ID here. So we have our current user ID that we can pass here. So this will start a game. All right. Then how we are going to use this game variable in order to receive whatever our Firebase sends us. So let's jump to our Firebase service. Remember that there is this game object that is published every time is updated. So we need to listen to that. So I will tell my Firebase service dot shared dot, and we need to get this game, and we want to assign this, assign to, and we want to assign it to our game object. So I will say it's need a / dot game, and let me actually take care of this, because this is going to be deleted. So we will have a variable game, which is type of a game, and it's an optional. Right, so now we can assign it to our game here, whatever we have received from our Firebase service. And also we need to have some cancelables set up so we can store it there. Let's put it under here. I'm going to say private var this is going to be a set of any cancelable. We need to import combine, import AV import combine only. So any cancelable should be available now, and we will initialize it with an empty array. So we will have this set that this basically does some cleanup whenever our view is no longer needed. We want to assign all these, and we need to say on self here, because where this is where our game object is living. It's in our class, so it's on the self. And now we need to store in, and we have this set of any cancelables. I can say cancelables here. So in short, what this code does is access our Firebase service shared, grabs the game object, and it assigns to our game object here. Right, so our game here that we have will be always equals to the game we have in our Firebase service, which is the most up-to-date game that we are getting from our Firebase. So this way we have like one source of truth in our game, and it's always only one game object available. Okay, now we have some errors here because this process player moves. Let's just for now comment out things. I just want to command B and see if my project works. There is one more error, which is this is in our GameView. It basically says that now our game is an optional, because here if you let me just go back to my model, GameView model. Now our game object became an optional, because before that it was just hard-coded game, and it wasn't optional because we had initialized it straight away, and we knew that it couldn't be like an empty nil object. But right now it's optional because maybe for some reason our Firebase will not have any games, and then we don't want to continue the game and crash our application. So let's see here, it says player indicator, and then it's an optional here. We just put the question mark, and yeah, this should let's see, game view model, game moves, indicator, and then we have the default value. Let's see why it is still complaining. Let's just click on fix. I just added the question mark for us. was deleted. Command P to build one more time. All right, there are no errors and we have our own appear. Now let's call the function that we want. So we created in our view model the function called getTheGame. All right, so if I run my application, and as soon as we open the GameView, this should create a game for us in our Firebase. Let me just quickly jump to my Firebase. I'm going to reload, and you will see that it's still empty here. And now let's click on a play button. There's nothing here because we need to reload it to be able to see that. So you can see that it says a collection game was created, and then under game we have created one object. So this is a game. This is a folder of all games. So we have created one game with an ID which was generated, and you see that these two are matching. The blocked move for player ID is CFFE0C2B. Moves, we have 9 objects of nil, and on Firebase it's a null object, not nil. Player 1 ID is our blocked user is the same. Player 2 is empty. Rematch player ID is empty, and winning player ID is empty as well. So we have created a game object here. So if I go to my console here, we should see decoding user. Okay, this is not what we are interested in. It says creating game for user ID, and then we have our user ID that we have created. This is our user 1. If you compare the IDs here, this is the player 1 ID. So we have successfully created a game online. So logically, if I stop this and click on play button, we are going to create another game and not join this game, because okay, this game doesn't have a player 2 ID, but remember we are filtering out that the games we have created, we don't want to join. So let's try. If I click on play, now we don't have to refresh our Firebase area, and it automatically creates a new game for us. It's a different game, but the player 1 is the same. This will happen as many times as I click on play button, because whenever I click on play button, there will be a new game because we cannot join the game that we have created. So the current behavior obviously is not very good, because we don't want to keep all these games here without any player, because whenever our user clicks on quit, what we want to do is also delete that game. Because let's say you are a new player, and right now if a different user comes and clicks on the start game button, he will be joined to one of these 3 games, and obviously the first player has already left. So we don't want to keep our player 2 waiting there indefinitely, because the player 1 has left. So every time we click on play button and the user decides to quit, we will delete the game object from here, so that nobody can join this game that doesn't exist anymore, because there is no other player. But before we do that, remember we have commented out one line here, one function, actually the whole function, because of the errors, so we can quickly check our code if it's working. Let's uncomment, Command P to bring back all our errors. Basically what it says is, now that our game object becomes an optional, we cannot just access the game moves or the, I don't know what else we have here, game block moves, etc. So we need to double check if our game object exists here. So what we will do is say guard game not equals to nil. Otherwise, we say else we want to return. because if our game object is nil, we don't want to process any player moves here. Otherwise, it would crash our application. And if it's not nil, now it's safe for us to force unwrap our game objects because we are checking if it's nil or no. And only then we are proceeding. Command P to see if there are any errors left here. All right, so basically we check if it's not nil, and then we are allowed to force unwrap it without being concerned that our application may crash. Block the moves. This will we do later on. So what we want to do here, let's quickly jump to our Firebase service. And what I'm going to do is let's write the QuitGame function. Because this, whenever we quit the game, basically what we want to do is go to our Firebase and just delete one document from there. And to delete that, we are going to use the name of the document. And remember, the name of the document is the name ID of our game object. So this is very easy and handy when it comes to deleting. So again, to delete something, we need to access the path. So if our game is in our Firebase game area, of course we want to find and delete it there as well. So we say Firebase reference.game, then we want to get the document that has our game ID. So we say self.game.id, and then we just call a simple delete on it, right? So this will go and delete our game. But there is one thing here we need to keep in mind. This code may crash, and the reason is whenever, let's imagine that we have two users here, right? If I quit the game, the other player still has a copy of the game object in his device, and it will be updated every time there is a change. It will be also updated. And when that user wants to also quit the game, there is nothing to delete on Firebase, because the first person who deletes the game is already deleted the game. So the game will be updated, and then there will be nil as our game, because we are listening for this thing, and when it's deleted, this object becomes a nil, so that we won't be able to access our game and grab the ID there in order to delete it. So in order not to crash our application, before I do a delete, I will check if the game is not nil. So if it's not nil, we will process and delete it. If it's nil, we will not do anything. We will just exit our application, our function there. Now let's see where we need to call this and our QuitGame. Again, we can go to our model, GameView model. And in our GameView model, I'm going to scroll down and check for draw. Let's see what we have here. Let's write it right before our user. I'm going to write the func quit game, and this will basically access our Firebase service shared, and we just say quit the game. Now in our game view, where we want to call this quit game function is every time our user clicks on that red button. So let's go to our game view, and here where let's see, this is the player move. Okay, this is the quit button, right? So every time we click on it, we are dismissing, our view, but apart from dismissal, we want to say view model dot quit the game, and this should delete our game object. So let's test this. I'm going to run application, and while we are running it, I want to delete everything from here. The easiest way is to delete all the collection here. And yeah, let's create a game. I'm going to refresh it. The reason it doesn't appear automatically because I have deleted the collection as well. Right, so we have created this game object, which is with the data here. So now if I click the quit game, you see it deletes the game automatically. Now try open, it creates a new one. And if I do quit, it deletes. So our starting and deleting a game functionality is working properly. All right, this is a good thing. What we want to do is also try to do this update thing. Let me go to my Firebase service. So we need to be able to join a game apart from creating a game. In order to test that functionality, we need to have our second device. So currently I'm running on my iPhone 12 Pro as a simulator. Let's run also on 12 mini. So in this case, we will have a player 1 and player 2, and we will be able to join a game of one another. So I'm running it on iPhone 12 mini now, and also we have it on my iPhone 12 Pro. And let me also bring up my Firestore here. Okay, and move this so we can see what's going on. So let's say iPhone 12 Pro will start a game. So we have a game object here, and let's try to join the game. So this has created a new game, which shouldn't have done. There is something wrong there. Let's see what we have here in our code. We have, this is printing out for our iPhone 12 simulator. It says creating a game for user ID, and this is our new user. And underneath it says, it's actually from our Firebase. It says, listen for query at game failed. The query requires an index. You can create it here. And it provides us a link. So your link should be different than mine because it will take you exactly where it, depending on your project, where it's located. But what's the reason is that this is happening is if we scroll up here for our start game, we have a complex query here. So we are passing two parameters here, filtering down. And in order for this filtering to work, Firebase needs to know that we would like to index and filter on specific things. So it's telling us that we have to create this index at the beginning before you can use that. Oops, where is it? So let me copy this. And we can go to our browser, paste it, hit enter. And this will tell you that it's going to create an index for player 2 ID and for player 1 ID. I will create my indexes. This, the status shows build. Usually it takes few minutes for the Firebase to create these indexes. I'm going to close this. And actually, if you go to your current area, you will have your data, the rules, and then the indexes. This is where it will create the required indexes for us. Just wait until the status here will be done, and then we will be able to run another check. So for now, I'm going to test the quit, the delete, and let me quit this one. and this will delete it as well. So let's just keep an eye and see when this will be done, and then we can run again in order to test our functionality. All right, mine took quite some time to finish it, and the status is now enabled. All right, that's cool. Let's go back to our data. And right now I have nothing here, as you can see. So let's start a game here. I'm going to quickly refresh, and we will have one game, which was started on iPhone 12 Pro. Now let's try the mini to join. As you can see, no new game was created, but this one wasn't updated. And the reason is it wasn't updated is because our, if we go to our update function, it doesn't do anything. So I can still do a print, let's say, actually let's cancel, and I can actually show you what I mean when we had this quit. Now if I quit this, even though the user that started the game was the pro user, I can quit this and it will delete. And right now if I quit the game here, there is no crash, because remember in our code here we just check if this is a nil or no before we do. If you comment this out and you try to do that, this will crash your game. But anyway, let's run our application, and to test this, we're running on iPhone 12 mini. All right, so the pro can start the game, and we have one now started. And once we join, actually it wouldn't have anything here, we just have to look for the print statement. So let's click on play. It says updating the game, so the update function is called, but we are not doing anything, which is good. So let's look into this right away. Let's see how we are going to update our current game. So we have a game object, and we need to save this into our Firebase. So what we want to do is basically is the same thing that we are going to do for our creating this online game. The steps are exactly the same. Just the difference is we are not going to update this game object. We are going to update the game object that we have passed. I'm going to copy the code here, scroll down, paste it here, and instead of this self game ID, I'm going to pass just the game ID that we have received from here, and here I'm going to just pass the game object. It says error updating online game. All right, so let's run again on our iPhone 12 mini. Let me see on my Firebase here. I need to delete this one, and let me create a new game that we can join. And once I click on the join, this game should be updated with a player 2 ID, and the block user ID should be replaced as well. So let's try that. You can see it was updated. Now we have player 2 ID, and the blocked moves is for the player 2 right now. So this is good, good news that our functionality is working. Right now we are lacking the information to be able to update this and remove also this spinner, and inform our user that we can start playing. The weird thing is we have both of them on X mark. First of all, iPhone 12X is not updated, and this is actually is not updated as well, so we need to look into this the block is not taking into account that we have here blocked the specific user ID, etc. We will look into this in our next lecture. So for right now, all we are interested in is that we are able to update our game once the user joins the already existing game, and we have checked that once there is an existing game, we are not creating a new game, and instead we are trying to join that game. Let's do the last remaining function here, listening for the game changes. This is a very important function. Without this, you cannot get updated when there are changes in our Firebase. So basically what we want to do is start listening for any changes happening to a specific game in our Firebase. So how we are going to do that? Again, the base URL with our game is the part we need to access. We need to basically get to the game and tell our Firebase that we want to listen to any changes happening to this specific file that you are storing. And to do that, we need to get the ID of the game as well. And we need to pass the document name here, and the ID is self game ID. All right, so now we are accessing to a specific game we want to listen. And in order to listen to any changes in real time constantly, we will say add snapshot listener. If you compare to this start game, we just get the documents. So this is a one-time thing. You will get the documents and you will forget about it. While the add snapshot listener is the key part here. It will keep listening for any changes happening and will constantly grab all the changes from our Firebase. Automatically will be pushed down, and we will update our game object. So I will just say document snapshot, and this will be error variable name. All right, so every time there is a change in our Firebase, this function, this closure of the code will fire. I can even do a print changes received from Firebase. So this will print every time we receive a change from our Firebase. So first we say if error is not equals to nil, which means we have an error. Let's say print error listening to changes, and let's print our error changes, and we'll get the localized description. And then we want to return, because we want to exit this closure and we don't want to continue whatever is underneath. If however there are no errors, we say if let snapshot equals to our document snapshot. So we are checking if this document snapshot is not nil, and if it's not, we will try to, because we are listening for a specific document change, we are not receiving an array back like we did with our initial query here when we were starting the game. So this always gets back a specific document with the changes inside. So we will try to convert whatever we received into the game and assign it to our game. So we say self game is equals to try snapshot data. This is we are going to use the same function as we pass our game dot self, and this will try to convert it to a game, and if it's successful it will assign to our game object. And our game object is a published variable and it will automatically update whoever is listening to it. And who's listening to it is our game view model. Here we have, if we scroll up, we are keep listening and assigning it to our own game variable. So it's always constantly gets updated and assigned to this game. Okay, let's go to a Firebase service, and this was the last function that we had to put it here. So let's quickly recap what this Firebase service does. First, we created a singleton object, so we can only create one instance of this class, and this class has a game object that will be published every time it's changed. When we start a game, we check if there are any games to join. Otherwise, we are creating a new one and start listening for any changes. If we join a game, we start listening for changes in that game. And when we join to a game, we will take that game object that we are joining in, and we will assign ourselves to player 2 and also to be the blocked user. And then we call our update game function, which basically takes our game and updates the document in Firebase. And the good thing about Firebase is when we are rewriting a document with a specific values, because our creating and updating function is same thing, we are using the set data function. And the cool thing about Firebase is it's so efficient that when you are calling this set data, it only updates the values that have changed on that specific object. So if there were no changes, it's not going to do anything actually. So you are safe to call this anytime you want on the setting data. Its efficiency is very good. So once we join the game, we update the game, and then we start listening for any changes in that game. And the listening, remember, it updates our game object that is published, and then our game view model receives the changes. And we have an option that there is no game, and then we create a new game, which our function create new game, it just initializes a new game. Our current user is player 1. We block our player 1's moves, and we create an empty array there for our moves. And we save it online, and we start listening for any changes on that game. And finally, we have an option to quit the game, which basically deletes the game object, so we don't clutter our Firebase, and also don't make our users that join an empty game to stay there and wait indefinitely. Now let's go back to our game view model. All right, and let's see here what things we have. We have this get game function that basically assigns whatever is the latest game object from our Firebase service to our game here. And then we have this process moves that is currently working. One thing is missing. We have this note here that we need to block our user whenever we have processed a single move. So what we want to do is to update this. So let's get our game object. And we're going to unwrap this, and we just say block move for player ID, and this will be our current user ID. And let's see, this is actually, we could just, I could just replace this here, but I'm going to get rid of that. Right, now our blocking should be automatically assigned to our block to our game object, and this game object right now is not updated at all. So we need to save the latest version of our blocked object to our Firebase. So how we do that? We can call our Firebase service, access the shared, and say update the game. And the game we want to update is the game that we have just did the changes. So anytime there is a move registered, we change our game, and then we change the blocked user, and then we update the game. So this means that our other user on the other side that is playing with us will receive all of the changes we just did. Okay, and the next thing here, we just don't want to print you have won or there is a draw. What we want to do is also update our game so that other party can receive the information as well. So in case if our user is the winner, I can say game, unwrap this, winning player ID is equals to our current user dot ID. And then of course we need to call this as well. And let's put it here. And for the draw, what we will do is game dot winning player ID equals, and I will put just a 0 here, so like nobody wins. And we are going to remember the 0 because when we are accessing our draw, we're going to check if it was 0, it means it was a draw and nobody has won. And I believe we can do it this way, and we don't have to call this update multiple times, and we just need to update the game here. If this is the case, we will update it here. Hold on a second. If we're coming down this, and this is the case, it will update and it will return once it's updated. So this will not be called. No, actually this won't work. We need to call this multiple times. Okay, so our draw and win is also updating our Firebase. Let's run our game and check if this is working. Now we need to run 2 times. First time we are going to run is on our, let me delete this one. If you want to delete only the single one, you can delete the document so the game stays here. Now we are running on the mini, yeah, and let me just run on the pro as well so that we have both of them the latest. Okay, let me open this here. So the pro starts the game and the mini joins. This area is not updated yet. So let's try to, mini has joined, so we shouldn't be able to make any moves here, but we are. Let's see what's the reason is. It's in GameView. We are not taking into account our blocking of the user. Let's stop our game. And I'm going to quit here. So basically what we want to do is block our view. And to do that, we need to go to our GameView. And our lazy grid is here. All right, so whenever our lazy grid finished, not lazy grid, sorry, we need this V, the V stack here. After our V stack, I'm going to put disabled, and here we are going to pass true or false. So we want to disable our V stack, which is in other words, all this playing area, because this is what our V stack is. So in order to do this dynamically, we can write a function that will check if the Gameport should be blocked for us or no. So let's go to our view model, and I'm going to write a function. Let's see, check for draw, quit the game. Let's do it after the quit the game. And I write a func called check for Gameport status, and this should return a boolean. So if it's true, we are going to block it. Otherwise, we are going to allow the user to play. So let's see how we are going to return true or false. So return, and then we have access to our game object. But first we want to check if it's not nil. And if it's not nil, we will say game. Now we can force unwrap this. We get the blocked move for player ID, and we will check if the move is blocked for our current user, and if it is, we are going to return true or false depending on that. So we say if this is equals to current user.id, otherwise we will say false. So this is a short if statement. All right. We check if the game is not equals nil. If it's not nil, we are going to return true if this is the case, or false if this is not the case. So basically we are checking if it's blocked for our current user, otherwise we return false. Now let's go back to our disabled option here, and I'm going to access my view model, and then we need to call the function check for Gameport status. So this will return true or false in our case. And also I want to do one more thing, because when we start the game, this is very close to the edges. I will add just a padding here. And let's run the application first on the Pro, and then we will do it on the Mini as well. Let me quickly check if there is a game here. I will delete this thing. All right, so on the Pro we have running, and let's do it on the Mini. All right, let's open it up here, and the player one is our Mini, starts the game. Now I am clicking and nothing is working, which is the block is working. Player 2 has joined the game now. Let's quickly double check it here. Yep. And now let's try to click on the player 2. Okay, the block has switched to the player 2. It means that the player 1 can do the play. So we can click only once. All right. But the problem is both of the players are using X. So the next thing would be to understand what we are going to show, an X mark or 0 or O in our case. And this again would be depending on the user who is playing. So we will check that as well. So let's go to our game view model here, because the problem is that we are seeing two X marks is hiding somewhere here. Just process player moves, and is player 1, we always say it's true. So whenever we are registering a move, we say that this was done by player 1. But this should be dynamic depending on who is our player. So let's write a function that is going to check who is the player 1 and return true or false depending on that status. So I'm going to scroll down right underneath our check for Gameport status, and this func will also be similar to our check for Gameport status. So we say is player 1, and it will return a boolean. And here again I'm going to return and we will check a game is not equals to nil, and if it's not, we are going to check the game force unwrap dot player 1 ID is equals to current user ID, else we will say false. So if the player 1 is the current user ID, we are going to return true, otherwise we are going to return false. So if I scroll up now, here instead of forcing all the time hard coding true, I will say is player 1. So right now it's going to be dynamic. Another thing we want to do is this loading thing all the time there. We don't want to see this when we have a game. So in our game view, when we are showing this loading view, I want to show it only when my user does my game hasn't started yet. So when we don't have a user 2 ID, it means we are waiting for user 2 so that we can show the loading. But as soon as we have a user 2 ID, there is no point of doing it. So we say if view model dot game is a question mark, it's an optional, player 2 ID is equals to empty string. We say if this is the case, we want to show the loading view. Otherwise, this loading view will not be shown. So let's run on a 12 mini first. Let me quickly check my Firebase, delete this one. All right, and switch it to Pro, run it here. Let's bring up the 2, open this one. Right, I will start the game on the mini. We have a waiting here. And I will start the game which should join on the Pro. And you say the spinner disappeared from here, and here it never appeared. But we still have to update our notification that we have here. Okay, so let's try to play. Our mini is user 1, so the Pro cannot start the game. This is X mark, and this is O, which is nice. X mark, and I will put an O here. All right, X mark here, and let's see. Changes received from Firebase. Okay, is there anything decoding user? We don't have any win printout. Did I delete this? GameView model, you have 1. No, I think it will print out if I click on this one. Yes, because it wasn't updated initially, because the reason you have 1 wasn't printed out is because our current user that is running the simulator and that does the printouts wasn't the winner, I guess. Let me see. No, it was the Pro winner. We are running on the Pro. Let me stop this so you will see what I mean here. I'm going to quit this, and this actually throws me out. All right, so let's delete everything. I'm going to run my application on the Pro. All right, and the Pro will be the player 1. All right, and the mini will be player 2. So we are running here. I will put an X here, an X here, and an X here, and says you have won. So this is printing out. All right, that's nice and cool. This is what we expect. But if we stop and if I run the game on the Pro again, but let's delete this one, the game will start the mini. All right, and now we will win on the mini. Even though the mini has won, we are not receiving any printout here, as you can see. And the reason is we will receive that printout only if I do one more click here, which is not the case. We didn't win, other user has won. So we need to handle this situation as well, because we want to be able to call these process moves to check if we have won or no every time there is a change. Because right now this process moves is called only when we click on some specific area, not the other user clicks it. Yeah, and we can still continue the game because the game doesn't stop right now, and actually it should give me a draw now. So what we need to do is to check these processing moves every time our game has changed. So basically what happens now is whenever the other user updates the game, we are receiving it and we are assigning it to our game object here. Yeah, and every time we do this, we need to also do some checks. So we want to check if the game status has changed somehow, because you can see the game has finished here, and we could continue playing because we were not notified. So what I want to do here on our variable, I'm going to check and put a did set parameter. So every time this game object is set, so we are changing the value, we can call some functions here. So what we want to do here is check the game status. All right, so let's write this function. We're going to check the game status. I'm going to do it at the bottom again, on top of my user. So func check if game is over. Okay, so before we do any checks, we want to make sure we have a game object, because if one of the users deletes the game, we will crash our application. So we use our guard game is not equals to nil, else we just say return. All right, so if the game is not nil, then we check if the game finished. So say if game unwrap this dot winning player ID is equals to 0. Remember, we were setting it 0 when the game was a draw. So we are checking if it was a draw. Else if game force unwrap this winning player ID equals to current user dot ID, then it means our current user has is not equals to empty string. So we have two options. First, winning player ID is 0, means draw. If the winning player ID is not empty string, because our default is empty string. So if we set it anything else that empty string and 0, it means one of the players has won. So we want to know who has won, me, our current user, or the other user. Depending on that, we are going to show an alert and telling that you have won or you have lost. So we'll say if game winning user player ID is equals to current user ID, it means that we have won. Else the other user have won. So we say we lost, and we say we won. Right, so we have two scenarios. For our player ID is 0, which is true, or it's not empty, because whenever it's empty, we don't have to do anything. The game can continue on because our user game is not finished and there is still moves that can happen. So just carry on with the game. If, however, it's 0, we will tell the game, we will show an alert that is a draw. If the ID is not nil, not an empty string, we will check who is the winner. It's current user or the other user. And we will show the alert based on that. Okay, so let's, in order to show this alert, we need to create an alert object, which we will do in our next lecture. So now we need to do this alert object. So we can create an alert dynamically depending on our case here, and then we can show that to our user. But before we move to that, I want to fix one thing that I missed in my process player moves. Here, when we are adding the move, we change on top to have the is player 1 dynamically. But when we are checking the win condition, we say for you, it's the user 1, we have it true, which is only for user 1. So we want to make this dynamic as well. So I basically say is player 1. All right, and now let's just go to our model here, and I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be our alert. So this is going to be a Swift file, not SwiftUI, and I will call this alert item. Okay, and we need to import SwiftUI, and I will create a struct alert item. Its type, this will be identifiable, because we need this in order to be able to show the alerts, and this should have an ID, because whatever is conforms to identifiable protocol has to have an ID. We will just say it will be a UUID. I just need an equal here. Then we say let is for quit equals false. I will type this and explain you what's going on here. Then so let title is a text, actually, not string, and let message is a text, let button title is a text as well. So alert item we will be able to display on our game model, GameView here. So underneath we are going to be able to show an alert, that is an alert that pops up here with a different messages, different titles, different pattern text. So in order to do that dynamically, we are creating this alert model. So each alert will have an ID, title, message, and the button title. The reason I'm keeping is for quit is because we will have two types of alerts. Actually, the types, I mean, one of the type, which will be the normal, will have two buttons. Our user, when the game is over, our user will be able to rematch or quit. So we'll have two buttons. But if the other user has already quit the game, we don't want to have an option to rematch the game. So we want to give an option only to quit the game to our user. So that's why we want to keep this record if this is alert for quit, or a normal alert. So it's basically telling us we will have a 1 button or 2 button. All right, and the rest is basically each alert has a title, a message, and a button title. And in our case, we want to make it dynamic, so we are passing the information. Now let's create another struct, alert context. And here we will have some defaults. So let's say static let win equals, let's put it you win. And we are going to say alert item. And we are going to initialize 1. And for the win, the title is going to be a text. And we will say you win. Message is going to be you are good at this game. Button title is going to be text, and let's call it rematch. Okay, and I'm going to copy this and paste it a few more times. We have 4 different cases: the win, the lost, draw, and quit. So let's say you lost. Let's say try rematch, and we'll have the button title rematch, and this will be draw, and here we put just draw, and say that was a cool game, and the title as again is going to be rematch. And finally we have quit, and here we say apart from title, I will say is for quit is equals to true. And then we pass the title, because by default is for quit equals false. Here I don't have to put it, but since for quit we want to say it is true, I will put it true. It should be a var because we want to change it, and actually this all should be vars. Okay, so is for quit is true. The title is going to be game over. Message is going to be, let's delete this and say other player left, and the button is going to be quit. Command B to see what's going on here. So we have no errors. This is good. Oh, the message should be text. Sorry. Okay, we have our alert item and some standard alerts that we have created. So let's go ahead and use them. We will go to our GameView model, and here we have these scenarios that we want to show different alerts, but we don't have any alert object. So we are going to change the alert object that will be published in order to notify our game view. So let's put it under our current user, and I'm going to call this at published var alert item is type of alert item, and this is going to be an optional. By being here, I just noticed that here we haven't called the function that we have written, check if game is over. All right, so this is called as well. Now let's scroll down, and in that function here for our draw, I'm going to write our alert item. So we need to actually create this alert item. So whenever our check for game is over comes, I want to set whatever my alert item is equals to nil, because if we have already an alert shown and it's some kind of update, we want to set it to nil, or if we are rematching it, we want to set it to nil in order for alert to disappear. So we will set it nil, and in case if it's a draw, I will say alert item is equals to alert context, and we will choose the one for draw. So this will do a draw alert and assign it to our alert item. And here we have we won option. So my alert item will be equal to alert context, and we have you win. And let's copy this, and the lost part, we say you lost. Okay, so these are the 3 different alert types that we want to see, and the fourth will be when our game will be over. In that case, we will show an alert, but it's not gonna happen here anyway. So let's go to our game view, and now we can actually call our alert to show it to our user. So after my padding, which is on my vstack, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I'm going to add an alert, and the one we need here is the item and the context, not is presented. We need the one is item. It says binding identifiable, and remember we set our item, the alert item, to be conformed to identifiable protocol. So here I'm going to pass, this is binding, so we need a $, and then we say view model dot alert item, because we have set this view model alert item just now. This is the thing. So every time there is a change, we are going to also set this, and the content is going to be our alert item here, and what we want to show here. So what we need is first to identify if alert item is for quit or no. So I will say alert item, which is the variable here. I'll say is for quit question mark, and this is gonna be like an if statement here, and if it is for quit, I will say alert, and we are going to create an alert with a title, a message, and a dismiss button. Because it's for quit, we will have only one button, and the title is gonna be my alert item dot title. Message will be my alert item dot message, and dismiss button is going to be destructive. Dismiss button alert button dot destructive with label, and the label is going to be my alert item dot button title. And the action for my dismiss button is, I just put a comma here, call action. And what we want for our action to happen is we want to dismiss our view if we are quitting, and then we want to call the quit game in order to delete the game. So I will say self.mode dot wrapped value dot dismiss, and then we will say view model dot quit the game. And here we will put double quotes. This is the else statement. For some reason, I try to do like if alert item dot is for quit and then the else. This didn't work. And if I use this short if statement with the question mark thing and then separate the if and else with the dots here, it actually works. So let me create another alert item here. I'm sorry, alert object alert. And this one should have a secondary buttons as well, because we will have an option to rematch or quit the game. So we will say the title is alert item dot title. Message will be alert item dot message. Primary button will be alert item. We need to first primary button. We just hit dot here and to the default. Label will be alert item dot button title. And here we need to pass the action. So we will just say comma action. Actually, I think here, yeah, here I have a problem. I'm missing a bracket here. I had the wrong bracket. And yeah, where we are, the action. So whenever our user clicks on this will be a rematch. So we want to rematch. What we need to do is reset the game. All right, this function is not available yet. And the secondary button will be the quit. So I will put dot destructive, this one. The label is going to be text quit, and action will be self. It's gonna be exactly the same thing actually. We will dismiss our view and then we will quit the game. Let me just get rid of this. Let's see. So this one is set. We have an error. No errors. Command B to check it again. All right. So let's run on the iPhone 12 Pro. And iPhone 12 mini. let me quickly check here and delete this game. Okay, and yeah, let's start on a mini and join with the pro. Okay, this disappears. Let's play the game. Mini starts, pro continues, and it says you win, you are good at this, and here it says you lost, try rematch. So here we have both buttons, rematch or quit. If I click on quit, it goes out, and if I click on rematch here, there is nothing I can do. We will need to also show the changes here, because when we click on quit on this side, we want to pop another notification here and tell a user that he cannot continue and he has to now only one option to quit the game, and we say quit. So our alert is working. We can try also the draw, but I don't think there will be any difference as long as the notification is working. So this, let's just I don't know. Okay, we don't have an option to make a draw because the X will win anyway. Let's do a rematch, and the rematch, the game doesn't reset yet because we don't have the function. Let's just do it like this, and I don't know, here. Yeah, now it should say draw for both of us. Yes, I can quit the game here and quit the game there. All right, so the last thing is left for this to do this rematch function, because right now we don't have it, but I can quickly jump to my view model, scroll, where is my view model? Sorry, let's go to my view model here and declare a function, call it reset the game. Okay, so now we can, instead of say reset the game here, I will say view model dot reset the game. So this way we don't have to come back to this, and maybe we will forget that and there will be an issue. We are calling this function straight away, or we have declared it, but we haven't done anything to that. So in our next lecture we will set that function, and also we will create this alert item for the quit once our game is nil. Let's do our reset game function, and remember that we have in our game, let's go to our game model, and here we have array of rematch player IDs. Basically what the logic is, if both users agree to rematch, we are going to start a new game. If there is only one user agrees to rematch, so clicks the rematch button, we are going to store that ID in this array, and then we are going to check once the user agrees to rematch, we are going to check how many people have agreed to rematch. So we'll count how many IDs are in this array. If it's 1 already there and we agree to rematch, then it's gonna be 2 and we're going to reset the game. And however, if it's 2 already after us, then we are going to just empty this array because the new game would start. If there were no IDs stored in this array, then we are going to add our ID there, and then we are just going to wait if the other user wants to rematch. Otherwise, if other user just clicks on quit, the game itself will be destroyed, and it doesn't matter, this rematch will be destroyed with it. So let's get back to our reset game. And before we move forward, we want to check if we have a game object, because this function may be called if once other user has already destroyed the game, and we want to make sure that we have a game before we try to add something to the array that has belongs to that game. So I will say card game equals not equals to nil, else we are going to do two things. First, we are going to exit, so we'll just say return. This is the second actually, and before we exit, we want to change our alert item. So I will say alert item is equals to alert item, alert context, sorry, and we are going to set the quit alert here. So this will change our alert as the quit. Remember, so far we haven't used the quit, and then other user will be notified that our current user no longer wants to continue and has already left the game. So this in case if we have no game, which means that the other user has deleted the game, so that we will give our user only an option to leave the game, and there is no option to rematch. If, however, we do have a game, so that other user hasn't left yet, we are going to check how many items we have in this rematch. So we'll say if game, and we can unwrap this because it's safe now. We have checked if it's not nil. Say rematch player ID dot count is equals to 1, and then we'll have else if, and then we'll say game force unwrap rematch player ID dot count equals 2. All right, so we will have these two options. So when we already have one user in our game rematch array, what we want to do is we want to say game unwrap dot moves are equal, and we are going to insert empty moves because we are starting a new game. We want to reset all the moves to be nil. So we'll create another array of 9 empty nils, and we will say repeating nil for 9 times. So this will reset our moves. Then we want to reset the winning player ID. So we'll say game force unwrap winning player ID is equals to empty string, because there is no winner, it's a brand new game, we need to reset this. And also we want to block the move for player 2, because our player 1 will be allowed to start first as it was with the initial game, and the player 2 has to wait until his turn come. So we say game block move for player ID equals, and then we access our game again and we grab the player ID, player 2 ID here. So this is actually resetting the game because one of the users has already agreed to rematch, and we are coming here and we also agreed to rematch. So I will put a note here, start new game. If we are clicking on reset button and the count is equals 2, basically it means we have started the game. I'm going to, we are in a new game, so we want to reset this because otherwise, if after the first rematch we want to rematch the second time, our count would have the calculation would be wrong, because in that case we would have the third ID in our array and then the fourth ID in the array in case the user decides to rematch. So if we already have 2 items in the array, we are going to make it empty. So we will say game force unwrap dot rematch player ID is equal to empty string. So in this case, we just reset the rematch ID. And finally, we want to say game force unwrap dot rematch player ID dot append, and we put our current user ID because we have agreed to reset the game. So we are agreeing to rematch, and then we will add our ID to this array as well. And finally, we need to save our game. So we need to update all the changes that we have. And for this, we will access our Firebase service, shared, update, game, and we will pass our game here. And we can safely force unwrap because here we are checking if we have the game. So let's see where we are going to call this function. We will go to our GameView, and I think we have called it already. Yes, we have called the function reset game already. So now we can try and see if this will work. And let's run first on iPhone 12 Pro. All right, and now let me run on the Mini. Okay, so let's start the game on the Pro. All right, and our Mini will join. So the disappeared spinner means we can start the game. Let's see if after the win, it says you lost, you won, and let's rematch this. All right, let's quickly jump to our Firebase, refresh and see what's going on here and if our rematch is being updated. So scroll down, as you can see, our positions are still here, so the game wasn't reset yet. Player IDs are there, and rematch player ID, we have one ID here already. Okay, and we have also the winner ID is actually the winner who wants to rematch. That's good. Let's open this, and I will click on rematch here, and you can see the game was reset, so everything is empty here. The moves, the ID of the game is still there, nothing changes. The block is the second player. Rematch player ID, both of them are here, so it is full, and winner player ID was removed. So now let's see that our user interface has changed also, and we can start another game. Let's just sake of it quickly win the game, and let's click on rematch, and you can see that now the both rematch ID was removed and added our new ID here. So there is only one user wants to rematch, and in our case, let's just bring it up, and I'm going to quit. This user doesn't want to rematch, so the game disappears, and here everything disappears. I cannot do anything. So what we want to also test, now I can quit the game and nothing will happen there. What we want to also test is, let's say, let's just quickly win a game here. All right, and this one is not updated. Okay, it just took some time to receive the update from Firebase. So let's say I will click quit here. All right, so this user doesn't want to play, and let's say we click on rematch here. So now we receive the new notification here with only the quit object. It says game over, other player has left. So this is our quit notification that we are passing in our let's go back to our game where it is. Reset game. This is the quit alert that we are passing to our user. So now we have no other option just to click quit, and it will take us out of the game. So we have one more thing to take care of, and this is this notification here that should be updated so our user knows the status of the game. So let's start dealing with this in our next lecture. All right, so let's create this notification class here. And I'm going to do that in my model. After my alert, I'm going to say Command N, and we're going to create a Swift file, and I will call this game notifications. And I'm going to import SwiftUI, and we will have the same type as our alert item. So we will have the alert item and then a context that will automatically create our notifications here that we will just call which one we want. So let's create an enum. We're going to call this game state, and we will have three state: case started, then we have case waiting for player, and case finished. All right, so once we start the game, we will be in waiting for player mode. Once the second player has joined the game, it will be like started, and once the players left, it will be the finished state. And let's create a struct and game notification, and here we will have static let waiting for player is equals, and we just pass waiting for player text here. Then we have static let game has started is equals to game has started. And finally static let game finished. Let's call this player left the game. All right, so this will be the three type of notifications, and we are going to use them. So let's go and where is our game view model? And at the top of our game view model, we are going to create a file for not file, actually a variable that will be our notification. So this will be at published var game notification, and it will be equals to notification game notification dot waiting for player. So at the beginning we want to have this waiting for player status, and throughout our life cycle of our game we are going to change this. So the first thing we have is this did set of our game, and here we have check for game status. We are checking this game status here, but depending on the game, if we have a game or no, imagine the other user has quit the game, and we will be notified with our game object will be set. We want to also update our notification, so we are informed that the other user has left the game if our game is nil. So we'll say if game is equals to nil, we want to, let's say, update notifications. All right, and let's see how we are going to update these notifications. And for that, I'm going to create a separate function. Let's do it right after our reset, and call this func update game notification, and we will pass 4, and we're going to pass a state, and this is going to be a game state. So depending on the state we are passing, we are going to update our game notification based on that state. So let's put a switch statement here, and we are going to switch on state, and the new Xcode is smart enough to put all the cases straight away for me, so I don't have to type them. So in case if the game has started, what notification we want, we will say that we want to assign our game notification to be equals to, and we will create a game notification dot game has started. And waiting for player, I'm going to quickly copy this, paste it here, and we will just say here waiting for player, and paste one more time here, game has finished. I'll just call game finished. So this will be update our notification function, and we will just pass the state here, and based on that we are going to set our game notification. So let's scroll up, and we are going to call that function here. So I'm going to get rid of this comment, and we will say update game notification for state. And since our game is nil, it means our game has finished. So I will pass the state finished here, and let's put the curly brace so it is on one line, and then we will say else, and I will put an else. It means that we have a game, so that in this case we are going to check if the player 2 has already joined the game, and then we can say that the game has started, or if the player hasn't joined yet, we are going to say that we are in waiting for the player mode. So we'll say game and dot player to ID is equals to empty string. So if this is the case, we are going to say update game notification for state, and we will say waiting for player. Otherwise, we are going to say update game notification for state dot started. So this will put our game notification in all 3 possible ways. If the game is nil, we will tell our notification that show the finished. If the player to ID is not empty, if it is equal to empty string, we say just we are waiting for the player. If this is not equal to empty string, we will say update game notification. So this is just an if statement on a one-liner, right? So now I guess we can test that. It's just we need to use this game notifications in order to show the text. So if we go to our where is it, our game view, and scroll up, we have right now just the dummy text says that we are waiting for the player. So we want to make this dynamic. So we will access our view model, and then remember we created this game notification variable there that is being updated every time our game is changed. So that by default it starts with waiting, and then we get it updated every time the game changes, and based on that game we will show our whatever the notification is required for the current state. So let's run our application one more time. And right now I'm running on the 12 mini. Let me just quit this game. So our Firebase is clean as well. And yeah, 12 mini is running. I will switch to 12 Pro. Yeah, let's run on a 12 Pro as well. And let me open this while we are waiting for the 12 Pro to run. Alright, so let's start the game on 12 Pro. It says waiting for player, and it has a spinner. Now let's join the game. It says game has started, and here we have a notification game has started. Let's quit the game. It says player left the game, and since we cannot play, we will have an option to quit. So let's quit. And let me start the game on 12 mini. It says waiting for player, and do it here. It says game has started. All right, so let's actually play the game. Just a quick win here. This will show you have won, you have lost, and I'm going to quit my game here. It says on top player has left the game, but we have an option to rematch, and if I click on rematch, it will just tell me the game was over, other player has left, and it shows here that the player has left, and I have only one option to quit the game and exit. And our Firebase is always kept clean and tidy. When the game is done, we just delete that. So guess this is all the functionality we have for our game. We can start the game and we can play, we can rematch it, we can quit the game anytime. The only thing that our game doesn't have is we're not keeping any score. And if you are really interested into a challenge, you can do that. Try to create a score for user, and every time the user is winning a game, you just increment that score with 1. And it's actually pretty simple. We have all the information there, how to update, etc. You just have to keep the score for the winning player, and this would be a small challenge for you. I'm not going to show how to do that in the course. The course will finish here, but these are small things that you can challenge yourself. Also, another challenge could be like pausing, saving the players online, and maybe showing the name of the player you are playing on with, or even the score that that player has, how many wins. That would be interesting. Another thing would be to create a not a multiplayer, but option to play with CPU. So if there is no online players, you can play with the computer, which is you are going to do the artificial intelligence behind the tic-tac-toe game, so that the computer will take the moves and decide which move to do in order to challenge the player. So these are the few things that you could do. Otherwise, this is it for the course. I really hope that you enjoyed it. You learned something new from the course, and also you learn how to integrate the Firebase and SwiftUI into a project. And this knowledge you can use to any other of your projects currently existing, or a future project that you want to build. This is just a very good ground in order to learn things, and it was a fun project, I hope, and it wasn't too long to build. So yeah, Thanks again for joining, and stay tuned for more tutorials and more courses, and keep an eye on our YouTube channel and also on our website iosdevschool.com for more content on SwiftUI, and other projects will come soon.